Hi, I'm Curatorial Assistant Kyla Temple here at Stenton, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about some of our great textile treasures connected to the Logan family, as well as the objects featured in early Dame Elizabeth McClelland's pioneering work of dress history scholarship, Dress in America, 1607 to 1800. So one of the first objects that's featured in her book, in her discussion of clothing in the 18th century, is this linen women's shift. The shift was the first layer of clothing worn directly next to the skin in the 18th century and was changed daily for hygiene. This shift, which we date to around the 1780s to the 1820s, has extraordinary pleated sleeves. Sleeves like this on both shifts for women and men's shirts would be held closed with butt shift or sleeve buttons, much like cufflinks today. You can see here a small monogram executed in very carefully counted stitches for Mary Parker, so we think that this belonged to Mary Parker Norris. The ruffle applied to the neckline of the shift is of a finer quality of linen than the body. This was likely meant to show outside the neckline of a gown. As always, when working with textiles, I have freshly washed hands and have removed any watches and jewelry that may snag on the fabric. This child's gown is one of the more remarkable textile survivals here at Stenton. It was also included in Elizabeth McClelland's book, as well as in the Philadelphia Museum of Art exhibition, Worldly Goods. This is an especially interesting example for the techniques in textile printing used in this child's gown. You can see that an ink made of a base of an iron or a tannic nature was used for the dark browns here. And it's really been eating away at the fabric over time, just leading that design to really fall and be punched out almost. This is a wonderful little survival, and it's been here for quite a while. So continuing with baby items, not represented in McClelland's book specifically, but equivalents are some great little baby accessories. These stockings are made of silk, presumably hand knit. They are from the Norris family, which we can see by a small N monogram here. Much like adult stockings in the period, they are knit to the shape of the leg and feature distinctive designs known as clocks on the ankle. These small infant mitts are from the Logan family, as you can see, with a very tiny L monogram right here. These look very similar to adult mitts with a thumb hole and small embroidery on the top of the hand. This early 19th century dress here is pictured in Elizabeth McClelland's book and is said to belong to Deborah Logan. So you can see here how McClelland's illustrator imagined the dress might be worn. McClelland was very active in the dame's stewardship and curation of Stenton, as well as in the early years of building the collection. For her book, she also photographed and had illustrated pieces of historic dress from both private collections and other historical societies. This dress is made of a very light cotton fabric called muslin and has a hand-embroidered border. This type of embroidery was known as whitework and it was very popular in the early 19th century. Here we see a scrolling floral design with vermicelli forms and small pieces of inset net in the center of these flowers. The border is executed in a series of French knots. This is one of 3 dresses we have that may belong to Deborah Logan. This garment here, dating from the late 18th to early 19th century, is called a Kalash Bonnet, so called because of the similarity of the folding mechanism to the hood of a calash carriage. This particular one is featured in Elizabeth McClelland's book and is quilted silk. It provides extra warmth for the wearer. The high style would be able to fit over a tall 18th century hairstyle, but these forms continued into the 19th century. The accordion structure is constructed using small pieces of reed or wood, some of which you can see is poking through right here. This is entirely hand stitched, and it's just a great little object, and really conjures to mind a snowy winter's day, which we have not had many of this year. Another great treasure of the Stenton textile collection that's been pictured in Elizabeth McClellan's book is this suite of a baby's gown, bodice, detachable sleeve, and bib, dating to around 1720. This dress is made of a fabric called damask, and it's linen. The design of this fabric, much like the fabric in the Yellow Lodging Room, is woven into the fabric itself, not printed on. These designs would be achieved using a loom called a jacquard loom, which could be programmed much like a computer with cards that dictate the pattern. Most children's clothing in the 18th century closed in the back. I believe that this dress would be pinned at the shoulders here, and this bodice, which closes in the back, would be worn over it. Closing children's clothing in the back was a practical measure. Most clothing was closed with pins, so if clothing was pinned in the back, little hands couldn't wander and stick themselves, also less chance of spontaneous undressing. One of the sweetest parts of this ensemble, in my opinion, is this pin-on bib in matching linen damask. There are several suites of table linens from the family that also survive in similar linen damasks, and it was one of the finest household furnishing fabrics for the table you could buy, and would have been a very expensive choice for something made for a baby that they would have worn for not that long. Something like this really shows the value placed on children in the 18th century, especially in Quaker homes. Small life was precious with high rates of infant mortality, and this was both a symbol of the preciousness of children and also a way for the family to broadcast their wealth and status. This is arguably one of the finest pieces of needlework and textiles in the Stenton collection. Featuring needle-made lace, this baby or child's cap shows designs that are common with Philadelphia needlework designs, many of which are drawn from the Marsh School. Especially distinctive is the double-handled urn with flowers. It's really hard to capture on camera the fineness of this work. It's almost mind-boggling how fine this is. Another especially fine little garment that was made for a child is this small bodice here. It looks like these may be woven stripes from afar, but they're actually a series of very, very small pleats. McClellan used illustrator Sophie B. Trout for her work, who she may have met through her sister, a practicing artist connections via the Plastics Club in Philadelphia, members of which include illustrator Violet Oakley. Here you can see some of the objects we've looked at today pictured. We believe that this Kalash bonnet here is the one that we've seen today. Here you can see Sophie B. Trout's imagination of the children's clothing here at Stenton. Note the printed gown and the linen ensemble, complete with the mitts and cap. This gown seen here is also in the Stenton collection. Here you can see some of the early photographs that Elizabeth McClellan took of objects. Stenton's linen gown, the shift, and the printed gown. Though denigrated during the professionalization of the field of dress history for its anecdotal and unsighted writing style, McClellan's work was ahead of its time in many ways, using primary source information from inventories, newspaper advertisements, and other sources that material culture scholars frequently consult today. She also created a glossary of textile and fabric terms from the 18th century in this work, something that would not be widely understood by dress and textile scholarship until Florence Montgomery's work later in the 20th century. This is just a small selection of some of the many textile treasures we've been unearthing at Stenton during our collections cataloging project. And it's been really exciting to pull these out of boxes and examine them closely. I'm happy to take any questions anyone may have.
Can you state the name of the book again?
Yeah, the book is Historic Dress in America, 1607 to 1800 by Elizabeth McClellan. There's been many editions of this book.
I don't think there are any more questions.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. I really enjoyed sharing these objects with you today.